We are back. I'm here with Brian. Got a lot to. How you doing, Brian? Got a lot to say right now. Had an incident a couple weeks ago, which I kind of have these moments where I feel bad, where I'll say something, and sometimes people take me the wrong way, and I did truly kind of feel bad about this, but I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I just want to apologize on here. And it's a great way to start off what I'm about to say today. As you guys know, I am an artist, a musician. I'm in several bands, several vehicles in which I express myself that are probably actually even more well known than this podcast. And about it was either last week or the week before, maybe 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's probably 2 weeks ago. One of the bands I'm in, Exsanguination, we were on a podcast out of Maryland, out of Baltimore, actually. I believe that it was a Snaggletooth Decay podcast, and they're lovely people. Well, I'm flattered anytime anyone wants to have us on any type of show or give us some publicity or a chance where people can learn more about a band or anything I'm doing. And the reason I bring it up is because, of all the bands I'm in, Branch Davidian is definitely the political band. The other bands I kind of keep it out, keep my opinions to myself. We kind of have an agreement. Branch Davidian is the outlet. And of course I have this podcast as well, where I can kind of say what I want to say about the world, about politics. But what happened is sometimes, not that it happened in this situation, but there are times where people might ask me my views on things when I'm kind of in a format that involves the other bands. It happens just because they see me and they associate me with having certain types of views. And that's not necessarily what happened here, but it did come up. Anyway, towards the end of the interview, the people conducting it asked us, they knew we were up from this area, and they kind of asked about, something that I've actually talked about. I think even on this podcast, I brought it up before. Kind of, about the Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg community, which I've talked about many times, in the films that they make, the movies, which I've said portray this area in a certain way, which I don't think is positive. And they kind of asked about that. They named a couple of the films. They were having problems with their computer, so the episode has not aired yet. And again, I encourage, here's a little publicity for them. Go check out that podcast, Snaggletooth Decay. Definitely check it out. You can check out, they're telling me by the end of this month, the episode we're on is going to be out for people to see. And you can go watch the episode, check out some of the other interviews they've done. But, they kind of asked about this at the end. And, saying, these movies like The Town, and there's a whole line of these movies that have come out over the years. And they named a bunch of them. And after it was the episode, me and the band members were actually adding some of those movies to the list. And
you mean like big true crime?
The movies that talk about the more organized crime aspects of this area.
Like the big scale stuff?
Yes. The Town was mentioned. There's a whole laundry list of these movies. Okay. And I immediately, I kind of rained on the parade because it was kind of playful the way they say, hey, is it really like that up there? And I said, well, I have a strong opinion on this. And you felt the silence in the room because the other band members, Brian, kind of knew it was coming. And I'm always told not to get into this stuff, which I respect. I understand that. But at the same time, they did ask. And I felt bad because they were playfully asking. And then I went into this kind of like, I don't know, very serious type of little monologue about it. And I said, I don't think these films are doing anything positive for this area. They capitalize on a very dark time in Massachusetts, a time that I personally would rather forget. And it's just capitalizing on it, glorifying it, romanticizing it. And I also pointed out that, all these movie stars you're naming, they love it here so much. They all go on and on and on about the Boston Red Sox and this, that, and the other thing. And as soon as they get a little bit of success, they move out of here. Now, maybe it might be for convenience. Maybe it's a logistical reason. Living in California is easier if you're in that industry. But, I live here. I still live here. You make these films, and then we're still here, living with the perception. And I try telling people all the time, I've said it on this very show. This is the perception people have of you. These people all the way down in Maryland, this is what they want to know about. And you're talking about a tiny handful of people who are putting that perception out there. Now, I've quoted David Carroll on this show, a YouTube blogger who I love. We talked about him quite a bit when Sean James was on here. And, I remember he was talking about, there was a video where it was either his grandmother or his mother used to say, if people are saying this about you, in every corner you turn, there's another person that has this stereotype of you. At some point, you got to ask yourself, did you do something to deserve this? So a lot of this is on us. If we behaved a certain way or we're part of something as a community, or we applauded certain behavior that is unbecoming of a civilized community, okay, that's fair enough. But at some point, you got to move on. You got to move on to something more positive. And I think these constant movies about an era in this area where there was a lot of organized crime, and constantly reminding people and romanticizing it and glorifying it is not helping. And I said that to them. And one of our guys made a joke about Baltimore, about the riots that took place a couple of years back. And then it got into Baltimore is filled with crime, Baltimore. And they, on the other end, and we were kind of laughing and going back and forth, but then they said, it's not really like that down here. A lot of that is the media. Aha, what have I been saying on this show? And I told them, listen, I've been down to Baltimore before. It's a lovely place. And as I've said on this show, I've been to many places in this country that were supposed to be these crime-ridden, disgusting places you would never want to live. And I get there and they're not that bad. I remember when Michael Moore did Bowling for Columbine. I believe it was that in that film. There was a point where he was in Compton and he's talking to this guy who's from there and he goes, I'm looking around. It doesn't seem like a bad place. And it's the same out here too. I've often talked about the smaller little, I call them city towns in our state. Brockton being one of them, Lowell, Worcester, Taunton. These towns that were always just really kind of nice towns, not really causing anybody problems. And then in recent years, we romanticize problems or conflicts or rough periods of time that they're going through. Taunton, for years and years throughout my childhood, you never would have thought of Taunton as a town with problems. And then somewhere around like 2003, 2004, you have one kid getting a fight at the mall. It gets some publicity, and then that's it. Now, Taunton's done a lot of work. Brockton has too. I was thinking about it the other day. Do you really hear about violence? I know things happen there. There are murders, of course. But do you hear about it on the level that you did, say, in the 80s or especially the 90s? Brian, do you have an opinion on that?
Here's the thing.
Yep.
You don't hear about it all.
You don't.
What they show you on TV, for example, like all the cop shows,
Yep.
the dramas,
Right.
where they all catch the perp in the end.
Yep.
That's in actuality like 2% of actual police
Right.
cases.
Right.
A lot of them they're not solved.
Right.
Let alone making it onto TV.
And let's say cops did come to Brockton, I believe. Another a TV show that capitalizes on this. Okay. The point I was going to make was this. The other day there was a murder in Brockton, and on the news, as I heard this, and I talk about how I don't like the news, but what happens to me is I might have a TV show on, and then when it's over, I might be in another room, the TV's still on, and I'm hearing the beginning of the news before I change the channel. You could tell. The guy said this is the whatever number of murders this year in Brockton. It really wasn't that many. Not that there should be any. I mean, one is one too many, but it seemed pretty low. And I hadn't heard Brockton in the news in a while. And you could tell the news reporter, you could just hear it in his voice. He was trying to paint the picture of Brockton being a problem. Again, capitalizing on Brockton.
That town.
Yes, making money off those people. I've talked about this over and over again. These news broadcasts, they are not your friend. And again, it is usually people outside of Brockton, white kids, who make jokes about Brockton, who love to hang out there because they can show they can hang. I worked there for years and years and years and years. Had no problems there, made tons and tons of friends, went there all hours of the night because of my job. And, like I said, trouble will find you if you want it. And the way people talk about Brockton and the perception of the town does not help. People that don't live there, that don't have to deal with what those people deal with. And again, I've criticized Brockton as well. I believe putting on a big water tower on Route 24 that says City of Champions for all to see, I always said that was a huge mistake they made because they're separating themselves from the rest of us. Calling themselves a city where they don't really have a skyline, they don't have a subway system, they don't have tourist attractions. Are they really a city on the level that you would call like Dallas or New York City? Absolutely not. They're a city by population only. And they push that agenda. We are a city. They're separating themselves from us. And I think that's a mistake. We're all here together. We work together here on the South Shore. That's my opinion. What is Form VOLTRON? Take back the South Shore. That's our slogan here. Work together. And they have news broadcasts now. They've got this one. I mean, it's every single channel. You heard it here first. Tune in every whatever day at 5 o'clock. And it's this montage of tragedy. They've got, I think it was in, I don't know what town it is, I want to say in Spencer, that church that caught on fire. That clip of the top of the roof, the thing falling over. That was months ago, and they are still showing that. Fox is still showing that.
That's the only thing that happens up there.
Right.
Kevin from Hard Rock Life, he used to live up by there. Nothing happened.
Right. But again, that is something terrible that every tragedy on that collage is something that someone had to deal with. And these news broadcasts are using that to sell their product. Your misery is sold as a product. Again, I ask people, what to you is news? Politics, economics, world affairs, foreign policy, social issues. Like I've said before, a tree falling on someone's house, I do not believe is news. It's a tragedy that someone had to deal with. I don't know how these guys live with themselves, filming people's houses in the midst of these tragedies and then putting it on the TV. I had a conversation with a person the other day, an elderly person who I know watches a lot of television, talking about the storm last week. I said, what are you going to do? It's rain. Meanwhile, they had everyone in a panic last week. And then what happened today? This one today, Brian, this big storm we just had, I didn't hear a lot of people I knew it was going to rain. But my point being is, here you are panicking last week. Nothing happened. This week, everyone's kind of nonchalant. And now there is power out everywhere. I mean, stop hanging everything you do on what this newscast tells you. This elderly person I know is in a place with a generator, is taken care of, is in no way affected by the weather. I've known elderly people throughout my life that they don't even have a license. They don't even leave the house. They're panicked over the weather. I go, why are you panicked? What are you worried about? You don't even have to go out in it. You're okay. We'll check on you. It's hilarious, right? So, back to, so my original thought, I did kind of feel bad because it put a damper, and I just didn't want them thinking I was insulted by the question. I wasn't. It's just, That's kind of opening a can of worms for me, asking about that, asking about those films, about those particular actors, because again, I just, you know, it's always hurt me to hear this and to see the perception of this area when sometimes it's accurate, but we need to move on. Sometimes it's not accurate. Sometimes you need to let it go and do things that are more positive. Now, speaking of that, I am not a fan of the Patriots. I'm not a fan of the local sports around here. I think they are worshipped like deities when they deserve no such thing. They're athletes. They're having a good time. They're making a ton of money. They're not even from this area. More power to them for making a living out of that. More power to them. But I owe them nothing. I owe nothing to anyone in the Celtics or the Red Sox. I don't know them. They don't know me. I see these things pop up all the time on YouTube. It's former Patriots. They're sitting around talking about their days here. They're not here anymore. They've moved on. They're on to bigger and better things. I'm still here. I'm still here. When they move on, after they're done with their short little time here, I'm still here. Yesterday. So having said that, this is why I tell you that the modern day Massachusetts citizen, especially the men, they stand for nothing. They have no self-respect. Let's start again with Tom Brady. Not only do you have loyalty to the Patriots, to the local team, your loyalty to the individual actually trumps the overall loyalty to the team. Let me give you the example. When Tom Brady leaves you and goes down to Florida, suddenly all the Tampa Bay Buccaneers games are suddenly available to watch up here when they never were before. I have seen merchandise, shirts, where they kind of mix the Patriots logo with the Tampa Bay colors. Have you ever seen those, Brian? They kind of mix the two together, right? It's funny because a lot of people, I bring that up, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I see them everywhere. So they kind of, we get behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers up here because Tom Brady, he's our guy. He's for us. He's down there. We're going to watch him.
Bread and circus, I say.
Right. So you will follow Tom Brady over your own team, is what I'm getting at. When the Buccaneers play the Patriots, sort of still okay, sort of happy if they beat the Patriots. Just showing where your loyalty is at. Even with this outrageous dedication to sports, even that loyalty can be shooken a little bit. Which brings me to yesterday. I've said many times, I love all forms of music. I love pop music. I have this really weird gift where I've always been obsessed with years. Whether it's television, movies, music. I'm obsessed with what year a song came out or an album or what era an artist. That's like my thing, my like kind of odd, like savant, like talent. You can play me a song from almost any era of pop music anywhere in the world. Even if I don't know who the artist is, just hearing the texture of the recording, I can almost 100% of the time guess the year it came out. If I get it wrong, for example, let's say I say 1973 and you say wrong. The answer is going to be either 72 or 74. Like if I miss it, it's always off by a year. So, I love this music. I'm not criticizing it. I think the new material that Taylor Swift has been putting out, I think it's amazing. Mixing that kind of 80s synth pop with country or whatever it is she does, I think it's brilliant. I think it's genius. I think she's a great artist. Go ahead, bro.
The stuff she just released
Yeah.
was her stuff from like 2014. She just had to re-release it because she wanted to, but the record company that had the rights to it wouldn't let her.
because they were still doing the crossover thing,
So
probably.
she did her own thing,
Right. What I think is this, to add to that,
and it was the biggest release,
Right.
The biggest streaming.
I think it's unique. I think she's onto something. What I don't get is this, though, and I've never understood this, and I do, and I know the reasons, but I do and I don't. We know that the record labels prop these people up. Like, you're going to be the next thing.
Maybe even create them.
Yes, create them. But then the public also has to buy into it too. Sometimes they advertise. I mean, Simon from American Idol, there's been a lot of, as successful as a producer and advertiser as he is with music, there's been times where he's flopped as well, where he's had artists that he thought was going to be huge and they were not. This is my one thing about Taylor Swift. What is it about her? You know, at one point, I think there was some rivalry with her and Katy Perry. What is the difference? Is there that much of a difference where kids, young kids go, I love Taylor Swift, but I don't like Katy Perry, or I don't like, what makes Taylor Swift, I mean, Miley Cyrus is still putting out songs. What makes Taylor stand out amongst?
That's like comparing Joe Montana to Tom Brady,
Right.
man.
And why, and again, man, I say this, I never judge people's looks. People have their different view of what different, you know, what, I guess, what the word pretty is to them. I look at Taylor Swift and I just say, okay, all day long on TV, you're seeing pretty girls. What is it about Taylor Swift that makes her like, to me, I can't distinguish her from any other girl I see on a magazine at a grocery store. I don't get what it is. So I don't, as much as I think she's a great artist, her standing out in front amongst all these other artists, all these other great musicians, all these other, I don't know what you want to call them, beautiful people. I just want to preface this by saying I don't get it. I don't get the why her part.
Well,
but
that's up to a talent agent. They'll go around the country and they'll go scout for talent.
Right.
And they'll be like, yo, this chick is hot and
Right.
she has a voice like that. And depending on whether or not the agent can get them to bend
Right.
you know, their will over her
Right.
in the form of a contract.
And apparently they did if they got her to wait 9 years to release some.
a lot of people turn down that contract.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
They do. You know something funny, man? Branch Davidian's going through this right now. Believe it or not. We're dealing with some smaller labels, some branches of the Relapse franchise. And with Branch Davidian, Nick's gonna put it out like under like the Abysmal Depths title. Because I said, dude, I'm not, you know what that band's about. I go, dude, I'm not censoring this band. Let's put it out on our own and then let them come to us. And if they're interested, then we know we can do what we want rather than us going to them. And then they're like, yeah, we'll put it out, but you gotta, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to stop by saying that. So that's my spiel on Taylor Swift. Now,
Nothing special.
right. So not saying nothing special, just trying to figure out why her amongst the ocean of artists. That's all I'm trying to figure out. Now, I refer to having no self-respect. All week long, again, hearing grown men, and again, I am one of those adults that likes music, likes Taylor Swift. I am a fan. I'm goofy about the movies and TV shows and music that I like. So I'm not passing judgment. I always put it this way. Look, I'm wearing a Dismember shirt right now, sweatshirt. Okay, I love Dismember. I've met them. But I don't want to hold hands with them after the show. I do. And send them Valentine's Day cards. A la the time they went around Boston asking people about these Valentine's Day cards they had made that had something to do with the Patriots, some charity thing, and who would you want to send a Valentine's Day card to? And these grown men are talking about, well, I'd like to send one to Rob Gronkowski. And again, I've been quick to point out, I am not homophobic. This is not me making fun of men in having a relationship with another man. It's nothing to do with that. It's the fact that I know these guys that they're asking this are not gay. They're grown adults with families and wives. If you're gay, fine. If you're married, you have a wife, you have a job, you have some level of self-respect. Stop batting your eyes as you wonder which New England Patriot you're going to send a Valentine's Day card to.
Imagine the one or two that security. Imagine the stories that security have of like 40-year-old guys just trying to be like, I love you, I want to be with you.
Right. I'm sure they're out there. Okay, I'm sure they're out there, Brian. I'm sure they're out there.
Thank God.
I'm sure there are people that get drunk at the games and don't want to leave after it's over and are hanging out in the stadium. So seeing these same guys gush again, I get being a fan. I like Taylor Swift. I like this music. But I do not worship the young lady. I do not shut my life down for a heavy metal band that I like or for her.
She's also doing witchcraft too. Evil
I've
shit,
heard
just
that.
like our bands.
Right. Just like our bands, right. So to hear, first of all, hearing the fanfare over this, a bit discouraging. Secondly, who is she attached to? The Chiefs, because of the guy on the team, that her boyfriend there. The Chiefs spent all week long plotting on how they are going to come in, destroy, and humiliate the Patriots, because that's what professional teams do. They are out to win. This team and entourage, along with Taylor Swift, are coming here to destroy you. From what I'm being told, there were Chiefs shirts everywhere, and that was in some way related to Taylor Swift. There were kids at the game holding Taylor Swift signs. This is what I talk about, the modern day Massachusetts adult man having no self-respect for himself. He loves these Patriots. He sends them Valentine's Day cards. He fights for nothing. He will allow a borderline monarchy to take over in his state during the coronavirus. He will do nothing about it. But if someone walks through that stadium with the wrong, a Philadelphia Eagles shirt, or he's at the Red Sox stadium and someone's got a Yankee shirt, he will risk going to jail, getting in a public fist fight. He will do that. But on this topic, when it's the Chiefs, when it's Taylor Swift, he just lays down his sword and he takes it. I am not defending the Patriots. I don't care. I think it's funny that they're losing. I think it's funny that they're terrible. But that doesn't take away from my observation that you guys, as supposedly loyal fans, loyal to this state, loyal to Boston, even though most of you ain't from Boston, this is how you behaved, and you bowed down and kissed the ground of the Chiefs fans, of Taylor Swift, of their entourage. This is what you did. This is why I tell you, you stand for absolutely nothing. On that note, I have been talking with people in this audience. We're small enough right now, and I know this from playing in a lot of bands as well. We're in this spot right now. The audience is growing, and I can still kind of consider a lot of feedback. There could come a point where I can't really do that. But we're kind of on that level right now where, it's small enough where people can call me or text me or tell me what they think. As I've said, I have been very critical of the police. And I've also said there's quite a few police. The number of police in this audience, they are there, they're out there, they're listening, and they're growing. And I have discussions with them. I just had discussions with one this week about some of the things that I've been talking about. In what respect have I been beating up on the police? Well, if you've watched any of the past episodes, my argument has been this. conservative commentary, talk radio, the various news stations, Fox News, the cable news. They go on and on about support the police, support the police. Then they simultaneously talk about the police state is taking over. The communists are taking over. Our rights are being taken away. We're being monitored. And as I've said in episode after episode, who is behind that? When your rights are being taken away, who is doing it? Every single time, it is law enforcement on all levels, local, state, and federal, and they're doing it under the umbrella of protection, stopping terrorism, stopping crime. And I've said over and over again, you see that these talk radio show hosts here in our state and nationally are running into this pickle where they don't know what way to turn, because it's been years and years and years of the police can do no wrong, but now they don't know what to do because all these police are in this audience and they don't want to criticize the police for taking our rights away. Now, some of them I have heard some guys, I heard one national guy borderline say every state needs to kick the FBI out of their state and hold the state police accountable. I've heard this same guy make individual criticisms about local police departments around the country, saying instead of, fighting crime, they're monitoring the local Catholic church because they had a meeting about pro-life issues or whatever it is. Now, me personally, my solution, as I've said since the beginning of this show, is to bring the police into the audience. Let them become part of the discussion. Let them defend what I'm saying. Give them a chance. I'm making accusations. Let them go on our YouTube channel. Let them leave comments. Am I wrong about what I've been saying? If I am, let me know. Am I being too unfair? Now, what brings this up today? I've talked about the surveillance state, how security cameras are so prevalent in this country that you can follow somebody with the cameras alone. You can watch them and map out where, if I drive from Massachusetts all the way to California, the police can use cameras on the highway, in stores, out in whatever, a park. They can follow me across the entire country and figure out where I am just based alone on the cameras. Never, let's say I don't even have a phone on me. They can just do it with cameras, okay? And what I've said on this very show is the average American has accepted the cameras. However, when there is a specific implication of the camera, that's when they get upset. Example, if the camera is mounted on top of a traffic light and it's there to catch people running the red light, and then they mail you a ticket with a picture that they caught you on the camera, that's when they get upset. Facial recognition, they get upset. But if it's just a regular camera, just filming, they're okay with it. I've got these in my town now, just filming public areas. We've talked about this, Brian, ad nauseum. We've mentioned parks where you and me like to walk, get away from people. You were saying one time you were in the woods and you saw a camera, like mounted on a tree. So I
saw a sign for one.
A sign. And I talked about, I've never actually found them, but I've seen the signs. There are cameras around here. And we're in like a forest setting. And what I've told people is, what you don't understand is the first line of cameras, the ones that were just there, not really doing anything other than catching people, that led to the facial recognition cameras, to the cameras catching you doing something. In England, they've got ones, if you throw trash on the ground, there's a guy watching you from some type of headquarters, and he can talk to you through the camera and say, pick up that trash. That's what they're doing out in the United Kingdom. Again, reminding people that when I warned people this system was coming here, I was told over and over again, not in my country, not in my America. Anger, that'll never happen here. Okay, and here we are. Now, I've also said, every single time we've done it on this show, Brian, we've done it on this show when we talked about the drones in New York City, flying police drones over people's house to see if they're having too many people in their yard, causing a ruckus or whatever the problem is. And that's another example of people getting upset.
Well, that's Ho Chu's world over there. She's
right. But the point is, Brian, on that same street, there could be a public surveillance camera pointing right at that person's house, and they ain't going to say nothing. It's only when there's a specific implication that people will get upset. And whenever you read these articles, or if you're watching a video or a news report, inevitably, nearly every single time, you get to the point in the article where they get the quote from the police, because it's the police doing it, and then the police defend it. Why am I bringing this up? I've been doing some research lately, and even I didn't realize this. Researching a little bit on the scanning of license plates. Now, let's start with this. I'm trying to figure out in this state if it's a town-by-town situation or if it's more statewide and every single police department in every town is scanning plates automatically. I was told, say what you're going to say, and then I'll tell you what I've been told. Go ahead.
When I was living in Weymouth about a year and a half ago, there was a couple days in a row where a car with equipment mounted on it would come through the parking lot and just circle around a couple times.
A police car?
No.
Okay.
No. But it had a bunch of gear on it.
I know what that is.
A bunch of scanner stuff.
Right. I already know what that is. And I have an issue with that too. That's probably Bing or Google or somebody. They're going around filming everybody's houses for like Google Maps and all that stuff.
It looked like it had license plate reading gear.
The one that I saw looked like the Ghostbuster car. I mean, there was a thing on top spinning around.
Yeah, that's a Google Maps.
Right. And it's unbelievable to me. Did I ever tell you, Brian, I don't know if I told it on this podcast, but I think I said it on the Hard Rock Life podcast. Did I ever tell you the time I like barricaded the road and questioned one of those guys? I think it was Bing. He was driving around. I went for a walk on Route 27 in Pembroke. There's the old first floor junior high. It might still be a junior high. When I was a kid, there's a little backstory here. When I was in that school system, today Silver Lake is 3 towns. Back then it was 4. So Pembroke was part of it. So even though I'm not from Pembroke, 7th and 8th grade, I went 7th grade was that. I went to that school on 27 up the road from the Silver Lake High School for 7th grade. Then what is now Pembroke High School, I actually went to 8th grade there because at that time Pembroke couldn't figure out if they wanted to still be part of Silver Lake. So I know the woods out back there and stuff, so I'll often go for walks out there. And I'm walking, and I see the Ghostbuster car go by, and I figured out what it was. So there's a road right near there. If you come out and take a right, it was like the next street down or something like that, a couple streets down. I got out, jumped in my car, went down the road, and blocked the road with my car. And the guy's putting his window down. I was like, what are you doing? He looked a little agitated. I just go up and go, hey, man. I go, what are you doing? He goes, filming all. He told me. It's for, I'm out in New Jersey. It was for whatever website. I'm going around. There's a bunch of us. We're all at a hotel in Braintree. And every day we're driving around, filming, taking pictures of every single piece of every house, every front door in this entire state.
It's for maps.
And I go, dude, did you ask anyone on this street for permission to take pictures of their house? Are you okay with that? And it's the same thing, Brian. It's like when I confront the news reporters. I told you there was a tragedy in Duxbury, and they were all camped out in front of the house, a horrible tragedy. I don't even want to talk about it. And I went up to the news reporters. I said, what are you doing? How do you film that? How do you do this? Haven't they been through enough? And they all put their heads down. They're sad. This guy does the same thing. When challenged, they all know they're doing something wrong. And he's like, dude, I know. And this is where I get really sad. He goes, dude, I needed a job. There you go. He needed money. Brian, what have I said on this very show? At my job during the coronavirus, there were things I had to do that I don't like. Never got the vaccine, thank God. But there were things I didn't like. I can't lose my job. I get it. And we had a nice conversation. He's like, dude, I know it's wrong. And you know what he said to me? He goes, dude, now that I work for these guys, he goes, I could, he goes, you're upset right now. He goes, I could tell you some things that would probably get you even more upset. I go, I'm sure you could. And I shook his hand. And whatever I was at the time, whatever websites I was running, I used to make my own flyers. I gave him some stuff. I'm like, dude, here's what I do. Check it out. And he's like, dude, I'm going to check this out. Thank you. And I shook his hand. And I think it's great that two opposing sides can but I did block the road and asked him what. And then it's like, you're free to go now, right?
Yeah, and you're like not a cop or anything.
I'm nothing. I blocked the road. Brian, as I've said, this gets really philosophical. There are times I respect private property. I respect freedom. But there are times when that love of freedom is being used against us. And there are rare moments where you have to it's being used against you to a point that you got to stop playing dirty too. That's just my opinion. But in those moments are rare. And that was one of them. But anyway, so back to my, the story here. So there's always inevitably the part of the documentary or the article where the police defend this. So I'm watching this one particular video about plate scanning. Now, starting off, let me say this. I believe the police have no right to randomly scan people's plates. They're on the side of the road scanning every plate that goes by. I don't care if it's catching criminals. I don't care. I am not obligated to have my personal property scanned by you. I am not obligated to participate in this program because it helps you film catch criminals. It's not my problem. And the police might say, yes, it is. Because if you encounter that criminal, my well-being is my responsibility. I don't do shelter in place. I don't do lockdown. I'm not a prisoner. My property is my responsibility. My safety is my responsibility, not the police. Brian, you just said at the beginning of this discussion how rare it is in comparison that, well, you talked about them actually catching the criminal or solving the murder. I would even say this. The crime takes place before the police can get there. It only takes a couple seconds to hurt someone badly. You have to be responsible for you. I'm a true believer in that. Even as savvy as I am about this, I will admit, I guess I maybe thought there was some type of, laser or something, radar that shoots out of the car, the police vehicle, and comes back and scans. I'm thinking scan, the word scan. How do you scan something? How do we scan something at a store? In my recent research, astonished at what I saw. The police cars, well, actually, by the way, I asked a police officer friend of mine, this is more of kind of like a sheriff's department friend. I don't want to give away what he used to do, but I don't want people knowing who he is, but other forms of law enforcement, rounding up specific people, maybe like gang members, stuff like that. He told me, according to him, it's not automatic in every town in the state. He says it's very expensive to have that equipment. And he said, from what he knows, it is a town-by-town thing. Okay? That's according to him. I'm still researching.
I think about the roads around here, and I'm like, that equipment probably takes a beating.
Probably. So you're saying it's more money to maintain it as well?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. It looks like very delicate equipment. Again, let me remind you, these police are behind tinted windows. I can't see them, but they can see me, and now they can, not only scan your plate, but what I didn't know was, from what I'm seeing, inside the vehicles, they've got a screen, like a camera. They're actually, they are cameras that they're using, and they're taking photos of cars. In some cases, again, storing it into a database. This one cop drove through the parking lot of a store. Again, see, I think that's very controversial to me. Parking lots are private property. You go to Shaw's, somebody owns that Shaw's. Right?
Yeah,
they're going through.
You can't just put up a food truck because someone's going to come out and be like, yo, you're on our property.
Right. And Brian, so this cop on this one little video I was watching, he's driving through the parking lot, taking pictures of every single car in the parking lot.
Looking for crime?
They were looking, there was some, I guess, yeah. Well, in some cases, they could be looking for a specific car. In some cases, they're doing it randomly, from what I understand. And if something looks wrong, they stop and try to figure out what's going on, who's in the store. That's on private property. It's like when I see the sign at Cumberland Farms, no loitering, but then the police are mounting themselves in that same parking lot to catch people speeding by. If you're not going in the store buying anything, then the cop is loitering, right? I mean, and you could say I'm being really hard on them. Well, I don't think I am. Because at 3 a.m, if one of those little tiny lights is out on your back license plate, they'll pull you over and turn your life upside down if they don't like the way you look. So I don't think I'm being too hard at all. Okay? Now, this cop on this particular little documentary I was watching, he's driving through the parking lot going, okay, I'm just taking pictures of every car here. Again, Brian, if I'm in that store, do I have any right to say, I don't want you taking, I don't care who you are. I don't care that you're the police. I don't care. I have done nothing wrong. You have no suspicion other than the fact that I'm here. I don't want you taking a picture of my car. I don't want you looking me up. And again, a lot of police get defensive about this. I don't care. I've never been disrespectful or unfair to the police, ever. I try to, listen, I'm one of the few people who is critical of the police, but at the same time, say, listen, I get where you're coming from. It's not easy. Your life is at risk. People hate you. People call you a pig. I do none of those things. I am not out to get you. What I am doing is commenting on the fact that the vast majority of my police friends moan and groan about what is happening here in the taking of our rights, in the surveillance state, in the intrusion, in the invasion of our privacy. Who implements this? Who is there to come get you when you say something that Maura Healey doesn't like? Your local police.
The sheriff.
Yes. Sorry to all the law enforcement in my audience. I'm calling it like it is. Now back to this guy. He's driving around this parking lot, Brian, with no shame. With no shame. Taking pictures. Okay. If I walked around that parking lot and randomly took pictures of people's cars, I just walked around with a camera. I sat with my camera, took a picture of I'm kind of leaning forward, taking, what would happen to me? What would happen to me, Brian? What is the difference between me doing that and what that guy's doing? He's looking for crime. So what? So what? Now, if the police want to go down the avenue of, look, it's for safety, it's worth it. Okay, fine. Like I said, I'm always willing to play that card. Fine. Let's go with law enforcement's belief that this is for the greater good, that it makes society better. My argument is this. Okay, then. But you can't now preach all this Freedom America stuff, because that type of activity is not what this country was based on. When the country was started, was this the premise that the police could drive around taking pictures? Some of those cameras, again, Brian, I'm researching, are they just going all the time? If you're driving up and down a street looking for cars, one video I saw pointed out, they're taking pictures of cars in driveways too. So your house is on that thing too now. What did I say a couple episodes ago? If your windows, your curtains are open, police helicopter at the right angle with a camera, they're looking for someone, I would argue at the right angle, they could probably see right into your window. If they're low enough and at the right angle and your shades are open.
Oh, I know what those cameras can do. They can do that from like a mile away.
Okay. What are we doing here?
Funding it.
Who's in that helicopter? The state police. With the American flag sometimes on the uniform, out in the front of their property, maybe somewhere on that helicopter. I believe the police, this is not an indictment of them. In fact, let me say this. I know they're bothered by it because every cop I know doesn't like it. So my question is this, okay, so where do we go from here? Because you're the one you're the one that has to kind of carry this out. As long as you understand that. No more pulling punches on this. I believe it's time that the police got to start looking in the mirror a little bit. Because they are the ones, you know, when you see a camera mounted in my town on top of a traffic light, just pointing at traffic coming down the road. Who played a role? When I asked around my town, I got the same answer every time. Go ask the police why it's there.
Safety.
People seem to think that the police had a lot to do with that.
All answers lead to safety.
Right. Well, okay, so again, and like I said, right now this week I've really been looking into this. Recently,
just like the Patriot Act was about terrorism.
They said even in England, in the United Kingdom, the CCTV, which we now have modeled.
Is it closed circuit if it's on Wi-Fi?
Well, I don't even think it matters whether or not it actually is. The point is it's filming people. At this point, it doesn't even matter. Yeah. So a lot of that, they put it up under the premise of stopping terrorists.
Stopping crime.
Right.
But for some reason, these criminals, man, they always seem to have the guns.
Well, listen, man, does it help? That too. Let's get into that. Does it help to catch them? Maybe, but does it stop the actual crime? Probably not. I don't think it's ever has stopped it. It might just help catch them quicker. Now, yeah.
But like I said, they only catch like 2% of them.
Brian, there's the debate about guns. Nobody in a gang is registering their gun. Nobody. These guns that are all over the streets that we hear about all the time, they're not registered.
Billy that.
They're not. They're not. That's a fact. They can't. They.
Criminals.
The gun laws.
Criminals will always have guns.
Right. It's the gun law. I know. I sound like every single conservative NRA guy on the planet when I say this, but those laws are not going to stop those guns.
I've posted several times already just about the fucking, it's the people behind the weapon.
Right. If you, let's say tomorrow we hit a magic button and all these gun laws that people want, they just happen. Okay, fine. I've said, people, go ahead. I'm not walking around with like an NRA like sweatshirt. I'm not out at gun protests. Okay, go ahead. Take the guns. But I'm telling you, whatever you allow left after that, the Elmer Fudd rifles or whatever they are, people can still conduct these crimes with them. Like they talk about the different levels of firepower. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's the weakest level of firepower you can find. That's still going to kill somebody, and you can still carry out a crime with it.
It's constitutional at heart.
Yeah.
It's so that if your government is acting a little fucky and they start like, coming after you, you have the right to defend yourself in that case. Unless they take that ability away.
Right. So, look, and again, I think that's selective too on the part of law enforcement because you hear a lot of these stories like in other parts of the country where the sheriffs go, we're not going to enforce the taking of the guns. Well, good for you, but you've enforced every other taking of rights. It's like I have someone I talk with a lot about this, and we always talk about the fact that like
our guns are what makes us safe.
Well, it's funny though because
nobody will ever invade us because of our current gun laws.
But it's also funny too how once you get there's a lot of people in this country that viciously defend the right to have a gun, and rightfully so. But once you get past that issue, you can take all their other rights and they don't care. They'll like let every other right be taken away. They just don't touch my guns, So that, it's again, I want the police to be part of this discussion. I want to hear what they have to say about this. Because from where I'm sitting, seems that most people concerned about this issue strongly feel that it's law enforcement. When you see emails or text messages being stored into a database, that's a law enforcement agency doing that. So these are the good people of law enforcement. The flag-waving, freedom-loving citizens who keep everyone safe are the ones that have done this to us. And it is outrageous, the invasion of privacy. Moving right along. There's been yet another instant, or yet another situation in the United Kingdom. Yet another one. Indy Gregory, another little baby, has been sentenced to death. She's already expired. And as those of you who've been following the show know, our first guest that we had on here was Thomas Evans, father of Alfie Evans, a famous case where, because of their health system, go back and watch the episode, a little baby was sick. The parents wanted to take the baby out of the hospital, take it to another country. And the British government said, no, you will not take this baby out of the hospital. It's happened again. Indy Gregory. Like I said, Brian, Thomas alluded. He said some things that you and me caught after the episode. And I said to you, Brian, it sounds like he's saying this is happening all the time. And we're just hearing about a few of the ones that get publicized. It seems that when we hear about it, it's when the family fights back. And then there's all these other cases we don't hear about. So now it's happened again. You got Charlie Gard, Alfie Evans, and now this is the third one I can name. Indy Gregory. I'm sure there are others. One thing I want to add this time. Now, just like with Alfie Evans, the family wanted to take the baby, I think it was Italy. Once again, Italy. Agreed, conceded to the fact that, okay, this British hospital, this death panel, their healthcare system has deemed this baby unsavable. Fine. We're going to take our child somewhere else. It will no longer be the burden of the British taxpayer. And they said, no, your child will stay here and die. Now, one thing I want to add, and I could never understand, but I'm beginning to understand, not that I agree with it, but I'm understanding the logic. One of the things that Americans have trouble understanding here is how can they tell the parents you're not allowed to take your baby out of the hospital and bring it somewhere else? I don't agree with it, but I can tell you what the law, I'm understanding the logic now. Their logic, how they can be so cold, is as follows. They believe that taking the baby out of the hospital is inhumane. The baby it's time for the baby to die now, and prolonging this is a human rights abuse. Now, my counter argument would be this. You hear in a lot of these situations, it's like feeding devices that are part of the issue. And you hear of these babies starving to death. If that's their way of letting the baby die, that's more humane than the parents taking a chance and maybe saving the baby. The baby might be saved if the parents take it out of the hospital and bring it somewhere else. Your way, the baby's got no chance at all. So that would be my counter argument. You got to remember, I remind people of this all the time. Everyone in this world who is doing something that you deem as horrible, every one of them, doesn't matter what country, what level of power, what the issue is, everyone in this world thinks they're doing the right thing. Every single last one of us believes we're doing the right thing. You see people being slaughtered by emperors and kings and dictators who thought they were doing the right thing for the country. The British government feels they're doing the right thing. They do. So it has happened again. Just wanted to point that out. Another baby gone in the United Kingdom. Which brings me to my final topic. Kind of feel I don't go with the cliche stories. I feel there are problems all over the world at all times. Just because the world has deemed a certain issue to be newsworthy or to be the big top story doesn't mean there aren't other conflicts or genocides or problems happening elsewhere in the world. There are problems all the time at any moment that you don't even hear about. So I tend to kind of like to figure out on my own what I'd like to talk about. But this one in particular, I think I got to kind of mention it because I haven't yet. Israel and Palestine. My opinion on that issue is very simple. It's like anywhere else in the world. Palestine and Israel, in both cases, have leadership roles, people in positions, like every other country, like here, who are kind of telling everyone else, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And when those people have an issue, it's the ordinary people who suffer. Every time. There are people on both sides suffering over there. I can sit there and make an argument for why Israel's doing what they're doing. Then I can go, wait a minute, Palestine's got a good point too. You can go back and forth, back and forth. There are people in both countries, all over that region, who have been mistreated. Now, I will say this. No matter how just your cause is, using terrorism isn't helping anybody. It's like these films that Mark Wahlberg makes. It's not helping anybody. Likewise, I've seen videos of soldiers from Israel, actual soldiers who are retired now, or maybe they defected, who have done interviews where they've expressed that they're not comfortable with things they've been asked to do. Namely, thing I have an issue with, and lots of countries do this when they're occupying or they're looking for terrorists, going into people's houses. To me, that is like a cardinal sin. Going into someone's house, even if you're looking for terrorists or criminals, handcuffing the father of the family in front of his family, questioning him. It's like, it was actually, believe it or not, it was watching interviews with American soldiers that got me kind of wise to this. Talking about, when you go into somebody's house like that, over there, that's a big deal. You're humiliating that guy in front of his whole family. Now, I would like to say that's the case here in America too, but now in America, we do shelter in place. We do lockdown, even though that's a prisoner term and we're not prisoners. We're okay with the police filming our house in Google Maps. So we've lost a lot of that self-respect. When the police say, we're blocking off this road, you are not going into your own property, we go, okay, that's cool. Sounds to me that in these other countries, they've still retained some of that self-respect. My point being is, maybe it's justified. Maybe, again, everyone believes they're doing the right thing. If we go in this house and we find the terrorists, we saved lives. Great. But you have to understand, there's little boys in those houses that see that, and they carry that with them the rest of their lives. The time that someone handcuffed my father and threw him face first on the ground and made him look like a fool in front of me and my siblings and my mother. And they carry that with them the rest of their lives, and they grow up to be terrorists. Okay? Just worth pointing out. And that's not beating up on anybody. That's not, again, it's like I said with the police. Fine, go ahead and do that. If you feel like that is the way to save people and to make the world better, go ahead. But understand there will be consequences. And again, it was soldiers, British soldiers, American soldiers, Israeli soldiers who got me wise to this. They were the ones who kind of enlightened me that this was going on. And they were the ones who, it seemed to me, were uncomfortable with it and had that kind of angle. Like, listen, man, you really, that's that guy's castle, and you're going into his castle. So again, I see people on both sides. I see spokespeople from Israel and Palestine constantly on the news. And regardless of which country it is, and I don't mind calling Palestine a country, I have no problem doing that. In either case, I see people who are just pulling the strings of their citizens and kind of pitting people against each other. That's just how I see it. That's all I really have to say about that right now. I know it's probably way more intricate and complex than what I'm saying, but to just pick one side or the other, I think it's kind of silly. I think it's going both ways over there, and that's my opinion on it. Brian, any comments, anything you have to say about anything that I said today? If you want, get the last word. I've said all I have to say.
There was a local school election last week.
Okay.
And I was watching this from afar, seeing comments online.
Okay. Would you care to say what town it was? You don't have to.
I don't know the town name, but it was for like the principal of the school or something like that.
Okay.
And they were like, we're not going to tell you who the candidates are until 3:00 in the afternoon on this date. And then you can vote at 5:00.
How are you supposed to research?
Exactly.
Okay.
Just, how they're going about electing these officials, quote unquote elected, if you will.
Brian, there's a local group that we've discussed. Okay. Pembroke Rising. Mm-hmm. I went to one of their events. Saying that I was impressed at what they're doing, impressed isn't even the word. They're pulling off miracles over in that town. In spirit of what you just said, at some point, I would really like to have one of them in here.
Excellent.
Because I feel like we need to talk to this guy because we need to see how they're pulling this off in that town and then apply it to the other towns and like to what you saw on TV when you see this kind of silliness going on. And
sounds like a militia. Sounds like extremism, which is
I would say extremism because you don't even have to be a militia now for them to
label it domestic terrorism.
Brian, like I said, they're taking names now of old ladies at churches.
Yeah.
And putting them on lists. And again, Brian, when the list is compiled, quiz time. Who compiles the list? Could you tell me, please? What segment of our society compiles that list?
The rule makers?
Law enforcement. Yeah, but who does it? Who collects the who is sent in to start taking down the names? If they put an undercover person under there, start befriending these people and getting names, it's law enforcement, right? Right? Sorry. I know this is hurting. Right. The lawmakers, again, let me be specific. The lawmakers are the ones doing it, but it's the implication of it is going to be the police. They're going to be the ones called upon. In other words, if Maura Healey or Elizabeth Warren has an issue with you, she's not the one going in. Maura Healey is not taking names down. She's going to send in the state police or the local FBI or whatever, or your local town police. That's who's going to do it. So I just want to leave people with that thought. Another great episode today. We got big plans for the future. We got more episodes coming up. And just stay tuned. And I just want people to keep spreading this. If you like what you're hearing, we're on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify. I'm relying on you guys to spread this. If you really like this, spread it to as many people as you possibly can. It's a small audience, and we're trying to grow it. And again, much gratitude to everybody who's been tuning in. Brian, thanks to you. That's all I got for today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.